Hello, everyone, and welcome. I've got Was No Bike Ride Martin here, and I thought I'd mention that because there was no bike ride in this case. Anybody that doesn't know, we're talking about the Suzanne Morphew case. Suzanne went missing, and her husband was very sus all through, and at one point he was charged with her murder, and then the case was dropped without prejudice, meaning that he can be charged again in future. There were mistakes made on the part of the prosecution and law enforcement, but there's plenty of evidence there to show that Barry did away with his wife, and then he's gone and filed a $15 million lawsuit, and he's suing the law enforcement personnel and the prosecution, etc. He's got a very egotistical attorney named Iris Eaton. I don't know how to say her last name. She's very wordy in this document. I think it's more to impress than it is to actually have a legal foothold. And we're going to bring Martin on in here and say hello, everybody, to Martin.
Hi, folks. Hi, Jules.
Hello. And for those of you that are wanting to follow along, this is going to be covering pages 14 through 54, I believe, in the legal document. And I'm going to be asking Martin questions about this, and hopefully he's got some answers for us. And the very first thing is on page 14, where it says that on May 10th, 2020, Barry Morphew, who owned a landscaping business, went to Broomfield, a Denver, Colorado suburb, to prepare for a previously contracted landscaping job to commence on May 11th, 2020. And Barry last saw Suzanne in their bed sleeping around 5 a.m. on May 10th, 2020, before he left on his drive to Broomfield. Oh, what do you think of this, Martin?
Well, I'll tell you what I think it is now. It's this is a lie. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's no proof that there was no preparations for this work to be carried out on May 11th, and as in his workers, his equipment and materials. So there was nothing there to do this job, you know. And Barry left Puma Path at 5 a.m., but he didn't see Suzanne sleeping. That's for sure. 100% he did not see Suzanne sleeping at 5 a.m. when he left to go to Broomfield.
Yes, it's my thought, and I think that you have the same thought, that Suzanne had already been dead for quite, since possibly the 8th.
Yes.
And
so, just going into that, this Broomfield job, like the Broomfield job was a job, but it wasn't ever planned for that weekend, for that Monday. So, and even if it was, there would be no point Barry going up a day early to do that job, because it's just like a straightforward, just a wall. You know what I mean? It's bread and butter money. You know what I mean? You just build a wall. It's blocks. It's geogrid. It's foundation, and it's backfill and dirt. You know, and it's equipment. It's bobcats. It's backhoes, and it's a lot of workers and moving block, taking it all back down again, and doing the foundation and building it back up again, making it higher and making it longer. That was not, he hadn't even the workers. The only worker he had really was Morgan, because Jeff was borrowed and Cassidy was borrowed. Cassidy's boss didn't even know he was there, you know. So this was just an alibi at the drop of a hat, basically. No preparation. Like he spent 10 hours in Broomfield from the time he got there to the time he left. And out of that 10 hours, he spent 22 minutes at that wall site. And he removed about 70 cappings, which he had no permit to do. And he just threw them up on the bank. And he done that so people could see he was there.
100%. And I don't know if our listeners know this, but it's illegal to do construction work on weekends in Broomfield. It's against city ordinances, and Barry would have known this since this wall job was actually repairing a previous job that he had done and done wrong. And so he would have been well aware that there was no work to be done on the weekends.
Yeah, 100%. I actually seen something recently which mentioned about Barry stopping at the first trash dump which was at the RT rail stop, and he said he pulled in to get his GPS for the wall, as if he was never there before in his life. You know what I mean? He just lies constantly. Just lies.
Exactly, and the location of where he was is actually a parking lot, the part of the parking lot that is for employees. I've been there. I went and checked out the dump run and all that, and he was not parked in an area where he legally should have been parked. I think that he did it in order to do something at the trash can. I don't know what he got rid of at that particular point, but I do know that the way the cameras are, there are trash cans where you cannot see somebody dumping something into the trash cans, because the cameras there aren't meant to be looking at the bins. They're for looking for any attacks or anything else nefarious that would happen.
Well, you have to remember that when he left Puma Path, it was basically 5 o'clock in the morning. We know that from the cameras. He passed down near Punch Spring and on the way up along the 285. Mm-hmm. But so it took him 3.5 hours to get to the hotel. It took him 2.5 to get back from the hotel. Yeah.
That has me wondering whether there were any stops in between.
Yeah, there were. Look, he said it. He said it to Cahill, I think it was, and that he had to stop. There was stuff blowing out the back of his truck, and he had to pull over, and so without doubt, I believe he stopped in Aurora. Do you know what I mean? I believe. Yeah.
Doesn't he have a nephew that lives there?
He has. You're talking about Trevor?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Trevor did actually live around the area. All right, he lived in numerous places around Denver and up in Broomfield. Well, his wife had property up that way as well, but no. What I'm talking about is where the cooler was found.
Oh, that's right. A cooler and a blanket, wasn't it?
Cooler, a blanket, and a suitcase that were found a few weeks after. Well, actually, about 2 months afterwards. I think May, June, July. At the end of August, actually, it was the end of August that they were found, and I was asked at the time to see if I could get that to if the mileage would bring me through Aurora by the person who found these items, and so I went at this and I tried for about a week, but I couldn't get it, and I left it for about 6-8 months, and then one day I just happened to be looking at my map, and in the middle of my map was this spot, Aurora, the hospital, and I said I'm going to try this again, but I'd done it a different way, and it brought me all the way from Puma Path through Aurora, all the way to the hotel, the exact same mileage.
Wow.
Yeah, exact
And
same.
so did LE ever look into the suitcase and
They
the
did, they did, and they were there for a few days, but we don't know if they took the items. They were under the impression that same thing as me. They thought that it was off track and he didn't have the mileage and he didn't have the time. But it works out he did have both mileage and time to go past Aurora. So there's another trash dump, if you want to call it. You could call
yeah,
it,
evidence?
suitcase and whatever might have been washed down that creek as well. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So who knows how many trash stops on the way? He spent all night when he was supposed to be asleep between 8 and 9 o'clock. He was up all night at his property, doors opening, closing, lights on, lights off, passenger door, driver's door, constantly going on through the night. So up to 3 o'clock in the morning, there was doors opening and closing, um, and then between the hour of 4, there was nothing happening, but there was movement happening. There was phones, Suzanne's phone and Barry's phone were moving and pinging between the hour of 4 and um, and 5 o'clock, which we know he left at 5.
Hmm.
So between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock, Barry's phone was down where the helmet was, or not Suzanne's phone, but Barry's phone was also down near Garfield, and Suzanne's phone was down near Garfield as well, which is 3 miles from the house, and the helmet was a mile and a half from the house. Do you know what I mean?
And this can be ruled out as being drift, right? Because drift
Yeah.
isn't that far.
No, drift is basically what the GPS you get in America is accurate to about 95% is accurate to about 2.5 feet. But when you have depending on the poor signal or whatever like that, it's normally accurate. 90%, 95% of the time, it's accurate to about 8 meters. So, um, if you looked at the day on the Saturday when Barry came home at 2:44 p.m. From the Salida from DSI, and they're
Hmm.
saying he's saying he's chasing chipmunks. They're saying he's chasing Suzanne.
Hmm.
Those pings that are going on at that time are not accurate because if you look at some of them are because they're for a longer period. If you look at the data, they're like for a minute and 20 seconds or a minute and 10 seconds. And then there's ones that are for 1 second. Well, they're not accurate. Do you know what I mean? So
Yes, exactly.
you go for the longer, the ones that are there for longer, and they are the accurate. So you would, if they had have studied this and understood it, they wouldn't have even mentioned the fact that Barry was chasing Suzanne around the property because he wasn't. You know, those
Right.
those those pings were inside the house. They were not outside the house.
Yeah, and they were showing that Barry was at the
50.
house, and that's pretty much all that they should have used that for, was establishing that
Yeah,
he was there.
100%, Jules. All I would have used that for was to say, yes, he's there. He's at the
Hmm.
house. Like, whether he's in this room or that room, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
You can't start trying to figure out that a guy is chasing somebody and shooting somebody with a gun, a dart gun, and all that sort of nonsense. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
There's no proof of it. Do you know what I mean? All you know is that he was at the house and that what phones were at the house. Suzanne's phone was there and his phone was there. You know.
Yes, exactly. And it reminds me a bit of the, I don't know if you followed the case, but Kelsey Barrett and Patrick Frazee,
I
he
did.
was,
I
and
did.
you know, his phone was with her phone, and they were able to establish that his phone was with her phone, and that they moved, and this was after he had killed Kelsey, and hers was also a no body case, but
Yes.
they had other evidence, and then of course Patrick's girlfriend that turned against him and was represented by Iris and Drew, who are Barry's attorneys, and she got a deal of a lifetime for turning on Patrick and giving all this evidence, but still, it's another no body case that did manage to get a conviction, and I think that while it would be ideal to find Suzanne, I think that there is enough that even without Suzanne's remains, there could be a conviction if the right, outside investigators, reopened the case. Because I know right now it's being looked at as a cold case, or not looked at. I don't know exactly what's moving on it, but. Luckily, Linda Stanley is not going to be running for district attorney, in the next election. So I'm thinking that once, and hopefully, who does get the position is not, a crony of Linda's, yes, and all that. But I feel that this case could definitely, end in a conviction of Barry, if only they would do the job correctly.
Yeah, it's upsetting actually when you see there's so much evidence there, and we get to it soon. Now, when you ask me a few more of these questions, we get to this evidence, But,
yeah.
It makes me sick to my stomach to see that from this perfect storm, which I put in Linda Stanley in with that storm, and maybe the judges and a lot of different things that's happened, all together, and Barry's not in behind bars basically at the moment,
Yeah, there's so much that went wrong in the case,
Yeah.
that went right for Barry to
100%.
end up not doing time at this very moment. But just looking at this whole lawsuit, I think that Iris is giving everyone a treat by the things that she goes and writes about or doesn't write about in here. There's plenty of lies, things that contradict themselves, and one of those is just right here on those pages 14 and 15, where she was explaining that Barry got told on the 7th that the materials would be arriving on the 11th for this job, and that he had booked the room a week prior to the 10th. Well, how could he possibly have booked the room a week prior to the 10th if he didn't know until the 7th that materials were going to be coming? And then it turns out materials were not going to be coming, because we know from Jeff Puckett and from Morgan, and I don't know whether Cassidy made a statement or not, but the materials still hadn't arrived on Tuesday when they decided to leave the job.
Yeah. Yes, there was no materials coming for that job. I'm actually in the same. I do the same kind of work. I would have done in my past. So I know this like the back of my hand, and this is so straightforward. This is, and the fact that the job was already done once, even though it was done badly, but it's the same thing. It's the same process. You've got your stone for your foundation, and then you have to whack that down and make it solid, and then you put down your first set of blocks, and then you put your geogrid in, and you backfill these blocks, and then you backfill them from behind and the geogrid, and you work your way up. And it's not rocket science, but for Jeff Puckett, Morgan and Cassidy to arrive down at that job with no bobcat and uh, no geogrid, no extra geogrid, no extra cappings, no extra block, no extra dirt, no extra fill. You know, they were at nothing. They were wasting the time. Jeff knew it. You know what I mean? They all knew it. You know, they all knew it.
Exactly. My husband also was in construction in his younger days, and he said the exact same thing. And especially when, finding out that what got left behind for them to work on the wall were a couple of rakes and shovels, and he was like,
Yes.
"You can't do a wall with that."
No.
And then the way Barry, ever since this was driving around with his bobcat like it was his security blanket or something. It just was, a glaring
Yeah.
red flag that he didn't take the bobcat with him to Broomfield, because if he was really preparing for a job and wanted to be ready for it to start on the Monday, he would have brought his bobcat there too on the trailer. And since Jeff
Now
Puckett was
that would
well,
have made sense.
mhm,
That would have made sense to me. If Barry had gone up there early and brought his bobcat up there and organised maybe somewhere to park it up when he was when it wasn't on site. You know what I mean? If there was some type
mhm,
of compound, or if we had, or whatever, and he would have also needed a backhoe. So because you would to dig out the footings, you would need a backhoe, and then
mhm,
when you put down the footings again, you have to compact them. You know what I mean?
mhm.
So you would need a backhoe to do that as well. You know what I mean? You need to whack them with a whacker plate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we
And
call them whacker packers, but same
yes,
thing.
same thing. Yeah. So that would all have to be done. You know. So
Mhm.
it wasn't. It's a fairly straightforward job because it's repetition. It's the same thing over and over again. And but you have to start from the foundation up, and the foundation has to be right, which it wasn't in the first place. And after the new people that did it, they didn't actually do a great job either, because Kurt was up there and he said it was very poor even after the second attempt. You know?
Mhm. Yeah, it was, and it's still not a pretty wall. Let's just put it
No,
that way.
no. Well, really, it does its job. It's a retaining wall, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
and basically, it's better than
Mhm.
no wall, I presume.
Yeah.
Uh, so, do you want to go on to a few more of these? And
Yes.
yeah.
Let's see. Right off the bat, same page, I'm going to be asking you about these phone calls because they seem to not be. Uh, I don't have the arrest affidavit with me right now, but I don't recall it happening the way it does in Iris's uh, document here, where she says that at 3 p.m. Barry called the neighbor to go to the Morphew home and look for Suzanne because he and his daughters have been unable to reach her. And was it actually Barry that called, or wasn't it one of the daughters that called the neighbors?
Well, I tell you what I've down for that. I said there is no phone records of Barry calling Martin Ritter until 1805-13, unless he used his second device. That's what I have down there. But we
And that's
know that Mallory got the job of dealing with um, the Ritters. Mallory was doing all and my question is, why wasn't Barry doing that? Because there's a statement which says that Iris puts it in here. Actually, Iris, it's further on down, but it says that the two girls were texting and phoning, calling Suzanne all day long to try and get hold of her, and Barry wasn't. Barry called twice. Do you know? We there? Can you hear me? Hello. Last May, I think. 1 second now. Hello? Hello? Okay. Can the chat hear me? Or it's just Jules is frozen, is it? Okay, Grant. Okay, well, I'll keep talking. I'll keep talking away. Um, uh, so yeah, basically, it says here that Iris said that the girls were, spending all day trying to get hold of the mother, and I'm saying, why wasn't Barry doing that? Barry was doing trash dumps, and Barry was spent 22 minutes at the wall, and he spent a lot of time in his hotel, but he wasn't calling Suzanne. I'm going to go into another one here. So the neighbors drove to the Morphew home and were unable to find Suzanne. They also did not see her mountain bike that she rode almost daily. Now, this is typical of Iris. She mentions things like her bike that she rode almost daily, making out that Suzanne was an avid biker. Suzanne was only biking since the end of March. And so you're only talking about a month and a half, basically. Suzanne was biking. So if she rode a dozen times, I'd be very surprised. But it's a typical thing that Iris puts into this lawsuit. So I think this lawsuit is designed for the public and for a possible jury, maybe, but it's not designed for the likes of the defendants in this suit. So this is a lie. The neighbors were asked to look for the bike, and she didn't ride daily. She was new to biking. She only started a month and a half. She was a big mountain biker and normally takes her car, and her bike is normally in the back, according to Miles. CCSO Sergeant Claudette Hoilson contacted Miles Harvey on scene and that same date, and he reported that Macy had told him that Suzanne and Barry argued frequently. Miles added that he was the one who introduced Suzanne to mountain biking about a month and a half. He described her mountain bike skills as intermediate level. So, yeah, not an avid biker. I'm going to look at the chat here. Martin, have you talked to law enforcement about your info? Not me personally, no, but between say the team, basically, yes, they know a lot about the info that we have. Yeah. Okay, Jules is still trying to figure it out, I see. 1 second, minutes. Okay, that's it. Let's see. I'm just looking at some questions, Okay, I'm just going to continue on. I'm going to, 1 second, I'm just going to go back a bit and see. Okay, I'm just gonna continue on till Jules comes back. So, that's the next one. At approximately 5:30 p.m., Barry asked the neighbors to call the authorities while he packed up his things and drove from Broomfield to their home. That's a lie, because Barry didn't leave the hotel until after 6:15 that evening. There are no phone records of Barry calling Martin Ritter until 6:05, unless he used the second device. There were two calls from Martin Ritter to Barry, one at 5:15:45, and that lasted a minute and a half. And then there was another one at 5:45:16 that lasted 2.5 minutes. And the 911 call was at 5:46. So something doesn't add up. Some part of his story isn't adding up there. Shortly after law enforcement was contacted on May 10th, the Sheriff County deputies Damon Brown and Layman Molnox found the mountain bike off the dirt road down a ravine near the Murphy home. Now, this is a little lie as well, because the 911 call was made at 17:46, as I said earlier. And 12 minutes later, they contacted Deputy Brown, and he notified dispatch to contact. He was notified by dispatch to contact Martin Ritter. Deputy Brown and Sergeant Mullenau drove to the Murphy residence and turned into the County Road 225 from US Highway 50 at 7:30ish. They drove slowly, looking back along that shoulder, and they noticed the bicycle. So that was an hour and 43 minutes. An hour and 43 minutes after the 911 call. So, yeah, there's a lot in this. Basically, most of what she says is untruths or doesn't mean anything. So, let me see what else we have here. Using their radio, they requested emergency dispatch contact Barry Murphy while he was driving back to confirm that the bike they found matched the description of Suzanne's bike. So this is Iris again mentioning basically using the radio, more or less saying that there was no cell service there, which we know there was. Self-service was a bit spotty, but there was cell service there. So the fact that they're using the radio is normal procedure, you know. Let me see. Let's see. Okay, I'm back on chat here. See what I think going on. All right, the computer's having issues. Thank goodness that Martin is treasure trove of information. I can't fix computers though. Yeah, I see this one, Trisha. I agree. I just think that Barry would be shooting himself in the foot if he does continue the lawsuit. I agree, but I think the green-eyed monster, I think if he thinks that he will get money, he's driven by money, this guy, and I think Iris is the same. So I think they might go for this lawsuit, you know. But and if, a matter of fact, I hope they do, you know. Jules, that you? Can I hear you?
Yeah, I just tried to come in on my phone instead. My computer seems to have crashed.
All right. Oh God.
Okay, so everybody can hear me. Good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I was just winging it there for a bit, Jules.
luckily, you're a treasure trove of info.
Well, I told you before now, I'm not great at multitasking when it comes to looking at the chat, and I'm in a world of my own sometimes. So I'm just here now looking at the chat, see if there was anything here any questions. Do I know why Barry was on the phone with Speezy at 2 p.m. on Sunday? Well, you're talking the Sunday when he was coming home. It wasn't 2 p.m. That's the time. The 6 hours difference in the time that you're looking at. So I could tell you now what time he was on with Speezy. 2 seconds now. Okay, so with Speezy, it was actually quite a lot of calls with Speezy, but there was the first one was at 8:14, and then the next one was 8:15, and then the next one was 8:20, 8:22, 8:23, 8:24, 8:26. So basically, he was just around the corner. He was just coming up into up the 285, somewhere probably around north Northrop. Is it? What's it?
Yeah, I wonder why he was talking to Spacey so much.
Well, I'd say what was happening there, by the looks of the length of the messages on the calls, like, so the first call only lasted 13 seconds. So that was a quick blah, blah, blah. And Barry didn't know really what to say. He could have cut him off and said it was bad signal, because the next one then was 2 seconds. The next one then was George Davis, which was 37 seconds. So there was, you can see what's going on here. And then you had 16 seconds then to Speezy, 3 seconds to Speezy, 1 second to Speezy, 9 seconds to Speezy, 7 seconds and 3 seconds. So these were yes, no, I'll be there in 5 minutes or whatever. You know what I mean? There was no long conversation with Speezy. But I'd say what was going on there could have been the good old boys club. You know what I mean? It could have been John Speezy might have just been available and just see if he could find out some information. I don't know. But I thought even Deputy Brown calling Barry at what time was Deputy Brown calling now? He called at 7:10, and he was on there for 2 minutes and 15 seconds roughly. So I thought that call was odd myself, because where I am here now, you wouldn't get cops calling people on their own cell phones, So it would be all done through dispatch, I would imagine. Yeah, it's, like, I couldn't. Maybe that is the case, but I thought myself it was odd,
I found it odd as well.
Oh, I see somebody here in the chat.
Oh, hey, AK. Awesome.
Is this where we speak of wankers? It is indeed. It is indeed. This is where we speak of these people. So, are you good now, Jules, to carry on?
I can. Yeah, I've got my notes in front of me and everything, and
okay.
I've got my phone sitting here.
Okay, you can bang them out, and if I've already answered it, we go to the next one. Okay.
Okay. Let's see. On page 15, talking about the mountain bike, uh, it's something that you had recently jogged my memory about that bike. I hadn't really been looking at it, and now it's come to my, uh, I don't know, that the bicycle, the seat seems to be fully extended, which would, to me anyway, indicate that it was adjusted for someone larger than Suzanne.
Yeah,
And I was
actually,
wondering,
I was talking to JK about this a few days ago,
uh-huh,
and he said to me that he looked into this himself. He spotted this as well, that the saddle was extended fully, and he said that maybe it was a second hand bike, and maybe it wasn't the bike that would suit her for her height. Maybe it was a slightly smaller bike, and that the seat was extended to suit her. But when I look at it sitting at the back of Molyneux's car, his patrol car, it looks to me fairly high. And when you see it also in the photograph in the garage, where one of the officers has his hand on the saddle, it looks basically waist height to the officer. So I'm thinking, if the saddle is waist height, like, her feet aren't touching the ground. So I'm
yeah,
wondering, did Barry cycle that bike up there and forget to push the seat the saddle back down?
yeah,
Unless we
that's one
haven't.
of the things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a clearer look at the handlebars to see whether or not there's a control, because on a dropper bike, where the seat can be adjusted, it's usually done that way.
All right.
But if it's not a dropper bike, then that seat is up too high for her, because from what information I've been able to get, she was like 5'4" or so,
Yeah.
and
Five four. Yeah.
then yeah, and then looking at the different size frames that bike came in, that fully extended, that would be too big for her. And I when I first was basically reading about the bike and all that, and reading what people said about her bike, I thought it was a Juliana, which is a Santa Cruz that's made for women. It's a smaller sized bicycle. But then, when you called attention to it and I looked, I realized that this is a Santa Cruz, which is, well, I guess they're actually unisex, because I ride men's bicycles as well, but I'm
Yeah.
tall. And,
Yeah.
it was, you know, just, I think it needs to be looked at, because it's quite possible that Barry rode that bike to leave it there, instead of it being adjusted for when Suzanne last rode it. And my husband pointed out to me that the gear that's in it was in a gear that would be right for climbing that hill. So maybe he did ride the bicycle over there to ditch it.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. Well, I would suspect that he did throw the bike down from the top, because if you look at the body cam, the grass is perfect. It's like not even a bird has walked across it. Do you know what I mean? This
Yeah,
it just shows no damage whatsoever, just where the bike landed. So it looked like somebody had just like tossed the bike down. I don't know if you remember, a couple of years ago, there's a friend of mine, Daniel O'Donovan, and
mhm,
he bought a bike, and he came to Salida, and he just bought one down in Salida, I think, and he'd done a test on it, of throwing the bike down the hill, and he'd done it about 10 times, and the bike never went down any like more than 4 or 5 feet. It got caught up. So
yeah,
that bike was picked up over somebody's head and thrown down, and that's the way it looks as well, because the handlebar got stuck into the earth, into the ground, but the rest of the bike just stayed where it was. It didn't slide down. You would have seen the grass and the vegetation would have been crushed because of it. So yeah, and also there's the thing about the dogs, the search dogs. That the fact that was Deputy Brown took that bike down, and he handled it without any gloves, and then he went off, followed the other cop up to the river where there was no fence further on up, and so any dogs that would have went along there would have followed his scent. Do you understand me?
Yes.
Because he'd already handled the bike where she, you know what I mean? He had this
Yeah,
hand on the seat. He actually handled every. As I said to AK, I said, I think there's only one thing he didn't touch on that bike. It was one of the pedals. I think he touched every single part of the bike. You know.
Yeah, it sure looked like it.
Yeah, it was like an octopus. So yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. The gear and the siege. Yeah, it's if he didn't have that bike in the truck with him and throw it out when he was heading off to Broomfield, and if he'd done it earlier, say in the 4 o'clock hour, you know, say 4:05 in the morning or something like that. I think he could have cycled up there. Yeah, he could have cycled up there.
Yeah, and that way he wouldn't be risking somebody seeing the truck as he did the bike that way.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was also kind of telling, and I don't know if you saw it, but the Tyson Draper video of his talk with Barry. Barry started to describe how the bicycle was laying, and we know that it wasn't there when Barry arrived on scene.
Yeah.
So, and then he stopped himself. So,
but this is the biggest problem with Barry. If he does continue on with this lawsuit, he's going to face that same thing he did with Tyson, where he can't stop himself saying things he shouldn't say. Like I can imagine how many cuts there was in that 26-second video that he, you know, he's not able to do that type of thing. And also when Good Morning America and all the other interviews he's done, I'd say they were under cut to ribbons, I'd say, from the questions that were asked and the answers that were given. And I'd say there's a lot more was on the floor than what was actually shown, you know.
Yeah. And so then we get to Barry arrived from Broomfield 2.5 hours later and wanted to help search for Suzanne. But we heard on the thing he asked about the bike. He didn't ask about Suzanne. So that was kind of funny what Iris is saying here. But then she goes on to say that, as can be seen on the law enforcement body-worn cameras, when Barry arrived, dozens of people were milling around the dirt road where Suzanne's bike was located. And I did see more people up at the house and stuff, but I didn't see dozens of people.
No. A dozen people, basically. I watched that audio, God knows how many times, but I would be very generous in saying a dozen people. There was Andrew Richardson and his wife Laura. There was Miles's dad and his mum there at one stage, and himself and his sister. Whether they were up at the road, the sister mightn't have been up the road, but the mum and the dad were. George was there, George Davis. There was a couple of the cops, and then near the end of that clip at the bike site, you just get a glimpse of about 4 or 5 cars parked along the road. Do you know what I mean? You don't see the people. So yeah, I would agree that it was a dozen, but not. That's just Irish exaggerating, and that's for the Broomfield. Barry arrived from Broomfield 2.5 hours later and wanted to help search for Suzanne. Now, that's a lie. Barry didn't try to help look for Suzanne. According to Andrew Richardson, Andrew said he and Laura responded to the scene where Suzanne's bike was recovered on that evening after Mallory called Laura about 9 o'clock, and Andrew and Laura stood with Barry on the road for 4 hours while law enforcement and along with the rescue people searched for Suzanne. And Andrew told agents that Barry was silent for most of the time on the road, regardless the suggestions Andrew made. Andrew told Barry that they should explore the tracks around the bike, or to go down to the area where Suzanne's bike was recovered to see if they could see anything. But Andrew wanted to search and look around and ask questions to figure out what happened to Suzanne, but Barry was not interested. He said that Barry looked at Andrew and said, "You're a really good man." Andrew didn't know what Barry was on about in what context, you know.
Yeah.
But throughout that evening, Andrew said the bike positioning in relation to the road made no sense for an accident to occur, because the rider would have had to make a 90-degree turn. So basically, yeah, he's 100% right. To actually go down that hill, if you're coming down the hill, to try and turn it down that embankment would be impossible. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So even at the early stages, the likes of Brown, his best friends here, like the friends and family, Andrew and Laura, and you see the Harveys, they all would have known, not just law enforcement, but everyone kind of knew that this was a planted bike. Do you know? This
Yeah.
was this, and Barry's his own demeanor. Do you know, like to immediately get out of the truck and then start suggestions of a crash or a mountain lion. You know what I mean? Like basically saying she's dead. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, let's move on. Do you know what I mean? You know, that's what was in his mind. Everyone else is hoping, God, where could she be? Could she be the neighbors? Could she be, you know, try to make her way home and maybe collapsed her? But no, straight out. Is it there 2 minutes and he's already said, you know, a mountain lion. Do you know what I mean? So basically, you know, he's that's not normal behavior. 100%.
Yeah.
It's the last thing people would think about.
Yeah, and somewhere in this document, I remember Iris said that mountain lion attacks are not uncommon in that area on humans, and they
very
kind of
uncommon.
are.
They're very uncommon, actually, because I done a lot of research on that at the time, and I think there was, a year. I think there was maybe 2 or 3 attacks per year or something like that in Colorado, like, you know what I mean? Not just that
Yeah.
area, you know what I mean? Or was it 2 or 3 fatalities? But I have the information in one of my files, but it's the odds are so stacked up against that happening, you know?
Exactly.
And the thing is, and when you see that, they would just tear her apart and take some part of her and go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and they're not going to take her helmet down, you know, 0.8 of a mile down the road and place it. You know, that's not going to happen. Do you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of this stuff doesn't add up, and I'll find it here in a minute. If you want to ask another question there, and I'll see if I can find my own file here.
Yeah. Let's see. I know that Iris made a several times. She talked about Doug Spence and his dog Roscoe, and I believe that Roscoe only smelled probably trace of Suzanne because of the deputy getting the scent on his hands and moving around where the deputy was.
Yeah, 100%. Like that, as far as I'm concerned, that area is contaminated. You know, and you could see from the body cam that they walked all around there, and they moved the bike up and down that from where it was thrown down. They brought it out that way, out by the bridge, and so that area was contaminated. They were never going to get a proper scent or smell of Suzanne down there. Do you know?
Yes, exactly.
So
And then
she goes on about this a lot. Do you know what I mean? And so, and she does this with everything. She does this with the DNA. She does this with the GPS, the drift, and the static drift, and lots of things. She keeps. She won't. She's like a dog with a bone. Will not let go. You know. And
yeah,
but you see, there's only so much they have, and this is my point. If Barry was innocent, it would be the other way around. He would have lots to say and lots of proof, but because he's made up these stories, he's boxed himself in. He can't say much. Do you know what I mean? Because he's been up to no good. Do you know, he has
yes,
been up to no good. So he's struggling to fill in these minutes here and times there and what he was doing and what was going on. And he's made up so many bloody stories about chipmunks and turkeys and deer and bears and God knows bull elk, and so it's mountain lions. You know, it's just crazy. You know, so this is the problem. Iris is struggling here big time. The only thing she has is to attack the information that that was put into the affidavit from the authors, who and the ones that they're actually suing here. You know,
yes,
so it's not as if she can turn around and say no, the matter of fact this or matter of fact that. No, there's none of that. It's all very weak what she has. It's all made up, and you'll see it as we go along. As we go along here now, you'll see it.
yes. And the next point is Suzanne's bike helmet being found 0.84 miles northwest of the site the bicycle was found, approximately 10 meters south of Highway 50 and about 1.52 miles from the Morphew residence. And I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was evidence that Barry's phone was in that area as well, where the helmet was found.
Barry's phone pinged that we know of, probably more actually. There was it was his airplane mode, I think, going on and off, I think, and that was at 4:32 in the morning and at 4:42 in the morning. I think they were the two times that we know for a fact that Barry's phone was out and about in that area between where the bike was found and Garfield along the 226, which is the little washed out road which it's barricaded off there. That general area between the 50 and the South Arkansas is where all this is going on, and where the helmet is Suzanne's phone. There is 3 locations for Suzanne's phone. There's one at 10 minutes past 4 around that time then, and then there's another one at I think it's 13 minutes past 4 or 15 minutes past 4. I'm not sure, one of those. And the last one is the 23 minutes past 4, which is up near Garfield, which is 3 miles roughly from the Morphew house. So what's all this stuff going on at this time in the morning when Barry says that Suzanne was asleep in her bed at 4:30 in the morning? Well, we know that's not possible, you know. And he was in his truck at 5 in the morning heading to Broomfield. We know that for a fact.
Mm-hmm.
So the time, whatever he was doing, and I personally think that he was planting a paper trail. So, well, basically like a paper trail. He was planting maybe the helmet, then the blue shirt that AK found. Then there was another item that was found as well, that I can't actually talk about. And then and then the next one was something further up, where the fire was. Remember the fire that was there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So in that area where that fire was roughly where the last ping was. So there is mines up there. Like Kurt went into one with Adventures of a Purpose. That's along that area. There's other mines along there. That could be what's something along there, along that. Or maybe all he done was planted a few items, and some of those items he might have planted probably never found. As well,
Yeah.
you have to, or got washed away, or just never found. You know what I mean? Because it is like looking for a needle in a haystack. So that's interesting. So, and I think that's very damning. Now, Irish is trying to say that there was an email sent from to Cahill, I think, about this particular GPS from Suzanne's phone, that they weren't exactly accurate, but they still would have been in that area. Do you know what I mean? You're talking about,
yes.
They may not be within a couple of feet, but they would be within, say, 26 feet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're talking about it could be anywhere near that helmet, or it could be, and you're talking a mile and a half away from the house with that ping is,
Exactly.
So she's trying to hang on to the fact that, they're not accurate and blah, blah, blah. That's not the case. It's like the pings at the house. Those pings around the house are accurate. The ones that have the longer time and have more strength and whatever like that, they're the ones that are you can rely on. The other ones, they're out by about 10 or 8 to 10 meters. That's they're not exactly, but they're not important. Do you know what I mean? As you said,
yeah,
and even the one down near the helmet, that's not important that you know exactly where that ping was, just that it was in the area. That's good enough for
exactly.
me.
And I just spotted on page 17 a lie of of Iris's right here, where number 84, she says Libler lived in Michigan with his wife and children who did not know about the affair, but it came out at the preliminary that his daughter found out, and Libler's daughter found out, and that's why Libler and Suzanne stopped talking for a little while.
That's exactly what I have down here. One of his daughters did find out about the affair, and they stopped communicating for a while. So this is the same thing now as you go through this. Like number 83 there, Suzanne reconnected with Libler on Facebook, and I have that true. That is true. And number 85 is true. But a lot of these that you're going down are not true. So this is like she's given out about stuff in the AA that's not true. Well,
but she's putting a lot of not true herself
and repeating it.
Yeah. And like 87, when she says Barry, like all of Suzanne's friends and family, was shocked to learn about the affair, but Barry had been suspecting. And one of the quotes that I remember from the arrest affidavit, well, I don't remember it as the entire quote per se, but I remember the gist of things was that Barry was surprised that it had been physical, and said that he had thought that there had been just an emotional affair.
Yes. Well,
so that shows he knew there was an affair.
Barry knew about the affair. He told her on Wednesday, May 6th, he knew she had a boyfriend. Like, all right, he had planned. He probably thought that nobody's ever going to find out that he told her. But he also told law enforcement that he chased her around the resort in Mexico to get her phone, and that was in January 2019, 16 months before she disappeared. So this guy wanted her phone so bad because it was killing him that she was enjoying herself on the phone to this guy that he was obviously watching her, and like he does, as we said, he stalks her. But so he knew 100% that she had a boyfriend, and we'll go on, and we'll see. We might come across it a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
Number 92 there. See that one? Approximately 9 days after the Morphew home was seized, defendant Him's shot is reported to found a plastic cap, which was believed to be a needle cover for a syringe by itself at the bottom of the empty clothes drawer. And I said, well, that's true, but this is odd and suspicious. There's no two ways about it. That is odd. And then the next one after that, read that one out, the next one, and tell me what you think about that one.
What, number 93?
Yeah.
Defendant Himshoot had also been responsible for the search and collection of possible evidentiary items in the Morphew garage and the locked gun safe before finding the needle cover.
The locked gun safe.
How? Okay, is there another gun safe, or because that gun safe that I've seen photos of look like an explosion, and it looks like it can't even close.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that she mentions it, she does this thing, and I see it all the time. If somebody says it's like an ad, put this in here, a big wave, a big flag. You look at me, locked gun safe. The reason she's talking about that is the 70,000. Remember the 70,000 that went missing from the safe?
Oh,
because
yeah.
That would be no good saying the open gun safe with the 70,000 there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That doesn't add up. So this is another load of BS, the locked gun safe. And then 94, what's that?
On at least 60 occasions between the time of Suzanne's disappearance and the day Barry was arrested, Barry voluntarily spoke with one or more of the defendant officers.
And I put down at the end, and he changed the story to suit the new narrative on almost every one of those occasions. So every time when he came back into an interview, he was changing his previous story. He remembered something or said, oh, that, by the way, that was that or whatever, you know what I mean? So, they're making out that he's been so helpful here. He was helping himself.
I'm laughing at number 95. Almost all of Barry's interactions with defendant officers were secretly tape recorded, including one occasion in July of 2020 on which Barry hosted defendants Cahill and Graham for dinner at the Morphew home, where they prayed to find Suzanne. Well,
so I've down here. That is their job.
Yes,
that's their job, and they were not able to make. They were not there to make friends, like. And I'm saying, is this illegal? No, it's not illegal. You know what I mean?
No, not at all.
This is part of their job, and she's whinging about this. Do you know what I mean? They're not playing fair. They're not playing fair.
And even the secretly tape recorded. Well, in the state of Colorado, only one person in the conversation is required to know that there's a tape recording. So I never expect that whatever I say to anybody is private and won't be recorded.
And then the rest, we're getting on to now into DNA. And this goes on for a bit now. Number 99 there, you can see. That. And this is probably, well, I said to you earlier before we came on here. Would be an ideal thing to do here. But I just put onto this one here now. Basically, you can read that out and I can tell you what I've said about it. in the summer of
In
2020.
in the summer of 2020, and this is paragraph 99 for anybody that's following us along. In the summer of 2020, defendant CBI agents Megan Duge and Caitlin Rogers and the other defendant CBI agents determined foreign unknown male DNA was found on various items of the crime scene, including the exterior cushion of the bike helmet, Suzanne's bike seat, Suzanne's bike brakes and handlebars, Suzanne's bike grips, the carpet by the Morphew's bed, on a stair in the Morphew home, and on the back seat and glove box of Suzanne's Range Rover that was parked in the Morphew garage.
Now, this was all gone through. Like, this was, like I have it down as Iris is knowingly, recklessly, and maliciously using this false information, misleading information, I should say, to try and sway public opinion and possibly jury members. You know what I mean? That's what this is all about. You know what I mean? She knows that this is all BS, that this was partial DNA and it comes to nothing. Do you know?
And she's saying it's from the crime scene and then saying all these different areas. And, does Iris know where the crime scene is?
Yes, exactly. That's a good point, actually. Yeah, that's a good point because nobody knows. Well, I don't know. I can kind of guess, but my would be the master bedroom, and that's because of the broken door. That door frame would be my guess, but we don't know. It could have been down County Road 105 for all we know, or
exactly,
and anywhere up in the mountain.
And I don't think that the Range Rover, the DNA in the Range Rover, I don't think that's related to Suzanne's case at all. Unless I'm wrong, they bought that car used.
They did, yeah. They did buy that car used.
And, it could have been used in... the DNA is...
The house was used
I don't know how
as
to
well.
explain it. I don't know how to explain it exactly.
People owned that house before them as well. Do you know what I mean? People owned that. And the bike was secondhand. The helmet would have been bought. But when you go to a shop to buy a helmet, most people pick it up and try it on. So that could be handled by 100,000 people and the workers and whatever. So that's the case with a lot of this stuff. And it's the same in my house. You go around my house and you could find lots of stuff where other people have been in doing jobs or whatever. People handle stuff.
Exactly.
So she is grasping. She shouldn't have to rely on, airy-fairy stuff. You know what I mean? She should have strong facts to say what happened here, or this is BS. So, and
I actually read the case law that she seems to be trying to aim for over the DNA, where in a previous case here in the U.S., there was a man who had found his mother deceased, murdered, and covered in a blanket. And the original arrest affidavit, they mentioned that fact, and the fact that there was unknown DNA didn't belong to the man. And then they didn't get their arrest. So then the police officer resubmitted without mentioning the DNA. And I think that's what Iris is trying to go for, is exculpatory DNA. But in the case that she's trying to compare to,
100%,
it was something very relevant. And this DNA that she's harping on about likely didn't have anything to do with what happened to Suzanne. And the DNA in her car was most likely from before it was her car.
100%. Like that car could have went through an auction. It could have, it could have been in a car sales lot. People sitting in it, test driving it, and God knows how many people use that car. The same as the house. The house was probably could be in Airbnb for a while. The same as I said, same with the bike, same with the helmet. All these things that she's mentioning. There's nothing to say, and there's nothing to say that DNA hadn't been planted.
Mhm.
I think it was Kurt said maybe before about Barry working as a fireman, that he could have access to those gloves that they wear that for collecting needles from junkies and stuff like that. And can you imagine what would be on your hands from on your glove, after doing a few of them jobs, and you
Yeah.
went around touching stuff around the house, it could be. We don't know.
Speaking of Kurt, he made a good point here in the chat too. He says when Barry and George Davis were molesting the bike that Sunday night,
100%.
why was there no DNA from either of those two idiots on the bike?
Well, it says there is an unknown. Do you know what I mean? Or it says something. I have to read it again, but it does say that it does mention that it is known to somebody or whatever. I was thinking they were talking about Brown, but yeah, we do know that Barry and, as I call them, is Sherlock Holmes and Watson, because that's what they were like. The two of them were bent over the bike as if they were, they're going to solve this big mystery, when they should be shouting for Suzanne or looking like they meant, like 1 minute he's crying, 2 seconds later he's asking questions, then he's whinging when he was asked a question about was she an avid biker or whatever, and he said no, she was just a novice or whatever. He was all over the shop, but this was not normal. This was not normal behavior. I know you can't really say there's normal behavior for somebody who's lost somebody, but from what I've seen in my own life, that people, they are not calm, cool, and collected. They are running around, is busy. Time is at an essence. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They're not wasting time, because that could be somebody's last breath. They want to try and find that person as soon as possible, not skulking in the bushes watching what the law enforcement are doing. Is what Andrew and Laura are saying.
Yeah.
Number 135. Going into 135, I think, is a good one.
Okay, 135. All defendants caused the arrest warrant to be issued despite knowing there was no probable cause.
Well, that's what Iris is saying, but they did have probable cause.
Oh,
Barry knew Suzanne was having an affair. He told her he knew she had a boyfriend May 6th, as we said. He had lots to lose. He had financial difficulties and would be in a worse situation with a divorce looming. He also had a lot to gain with Suzanne's inheritance there for the taking. Barry was the last person to see Suzanne alive at 4:30 a.m. in bed on Mother's Day, as he says himself. Barry created an alibi by planting her bike and helmet and drove to Broomfield pretending he had a big job starting the following day. And that didn't make any sense. Barry had not prepared for this job with regards workers, tools, equipment, materials, and permits. His excuse for leaving a day early was to get eyes on the job and see what could be done. But he spent 10 hours in Broomfield, as I said, and only 22 minutes on the job. The rest of the time, he spent taking bags of clothes, boots, etc., from his truck into the hotel room and then to various dumpsters around Broomfield. Barry lied to Martin Ritter, saying that he was at the job with his workers while he was at the hotel and his workers were in Salida. This was even before Suzanne was reported missing. Do you know what I mean? So that's very important. Yeah. Even before she was reported missing, he was actually lying to Martin Ritter. Barry also lied and tried to cover up the fact that there were no problems with the marriage. He deleted stuff off phones. Barry also lied about his movements on May 9th and in the early hours May 10th. Activities on his truck on the night of Saturday, May 9th. That contradicts his stories of cooking steak, having sex, and going to bed at around 8 or 9. Also, activities in the 4 a.m. hour, which we spoke about. So there's plenty of probable cause. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What she's on about is they said that Barry chased Suzanne around the house and shot her with a dart gun. Now, that is BS as far as I'm concerned. But
Yes.
it doesn't change from the fact that they knew and they know that Barry did this. They just had a problem trying to put all the pieces together. That was their issue. Not that they thought Barry was innocent. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. They knew that he did it. They just didn't know exactly how or exactly when.
And you know what? I think they're probably still struggling with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that they're not, but I have a feeling that they're still struggling with trying to figure out. I know how we done it, but I just I hope they know. What else we got here now? Oh, number 137. No defendant intervened to prevent the damage to Mr. Morphew, even though each had sufficient information and reasonably could have done so. The reason they didn't want to arrest Barry was because they felt they needed more time to prepare for the trial. Not that they believed Barry was innocent. You know what
Exactly.
I mean? She's kind of putting out that they all thought Barry was innocent, but that's why they were telling Speezy not to arrest him. That wasn't the case at all. This is the angle. This is what kills me, because if she's that bad, if they're in such a state that they have to use this type of behavior and this kind of narrative, it means that they are in big trouble. It's only going to get worse for them. Do you know what I mean? But
yes,
most people don't know this stuff. Most people see the pictures of the bike, Suzanne on the bike. I think Suzanne went missing from a bike ride and was abducted and blah blah blah. Do you know the story of all that got out and was done very well. You know what I mean? It was on posters, it was on flyers, it was on banners, and every TV show said missing woman, Colorado woman missing on Mother's Day on a bike ride. There was no bike ride.
no.
We'll move
on. 138 and 139 had the arrest affidavit not contained false and misleading statements, there would have been no probable cause on the face of the affidavit, which is untrue, because there's plenty of other stuff that is probable cause on that affidavit. And 139 had the arrest affidavit included exculpatory information that was omitted, there would have been no probable cause on the face of the affidavit. And I think she's harping on, I think what she's talking about there is the DNA stuff, but the DNA is not exculpatory information, because the DNA is not related to Suzanne's disappearance and murder.
That's it. And like the big picture is, it's like if you see the guy and just say you had camera evidence of actually somebody murdering somebody, and then they went to court and they were saying, oh, but there was we found DNA in the shed at the back, that could have belonged to a one-eyed murderer, and a strangler or something. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why doesn't everything else add up? Do you know what I mean? Why you have all this bullshit in Broomfield and the alibis and all the lies and all the lies he's told. If he's innocent, do you know what I mean? Why
Yeah.
all that? You know what I mean?
Because I know for a fact that if I hadn't done anything wonky and somebody showed me like cell phone pins or whatever and said, "Hey, you were down there doing something," if I hadn't been down there doing something, I'd be like, "No, I wasn't. Something's wrong here."
Yeah, something's wrong. Exactly, something is wrong here. We show you flying around the house. Oh, I was shooting chipmunks. Yeah, I shoot 85 chipmunks. Blah blah blah. No, you would turn around and say, "Hold on, that wasn't me. I don't know what's going on there, but that wasn't me. I was in the kitchen. I was making myself some food, or I was charging my phone, or I was whatever." You wouldn't. This is the problem. Like when they showed him those pings of Suzanne's phone and his phone down along towards Garfield along the 226. Barry then changed the story to, "Oh, I seen and remember now, I seen some bull elk, and I drove down, and then I turned around and I went straight to Broomfield. I didn't go up by Garfield, up by the mine. I just turned around and I went straight to Broomfield." That was the story, which I don't believe. I don't believe Barry ever drove his truck up to Garfield. It could possibly happen, but I do not believe that happened. I believe Barry went along up the 226 and along that way, whether he was on an electric bike or he was on some mode of transport, but he was fairly fast because he had an hour from 4 o'clock to be back into Puma Pat by 5 o'clock to get into his truck to go to Broomfield. He was planting stuff along that route, and he had to. He's either a very fast, fit man to run, or else he was on some mode of transport. And I think he was probably on that electric bike he has in his garage. To be honest.
Yeah, that's very feasible.
And quiet, no noise, absolutely no noise. Okay, 151 is we're moving on. 151.
Okay. On the afternoon of May 9th, 2020, Suzanne sent a photo of herself via LinkedIn to Libler, her lover.
And see, there's no proof who sent that poorly photoshopped photo of Suzanne to Libler, or where and when it was taken. Like, I don't know how many photographs I've taken, but if I took a photograph, I'd look at it before I'd send it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought it was a terrible photograph. Do you know? I don't think Suzanne. I see all the other photographs of Suzanne, and she's very photogenic. And then all of a sudden, she sends this one to her boyfriend. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Do you know?
Yeah, and they don't have any proof that it was her that sent it. It got sent.
Or communicated.
You know,
or communicated to Libler at all. There was no, like, it could be me. I could be sending those texts. Anyone. Do you know? It's just somebody texting. You know that you can't prove. Libler can't prove who was sending him the messages. Do you know?
Right, and whoever has the phone can easily send any picture from the gallery out. It doesn't and then if you don't have the phone for evidence, you can't see
that's just the thing
when it was in the gallery.
And this is the thing. This is the bit about it. Like, it's easy to put that in when there's no phone. Do you know what I mean? There's no way of tracing it. All right, we can move on a bit if you want.
Okay.
Oh, this is good. 154, I thought was good.
The arrest affidavit contained false and misleading statements and omitted exculpatory information.
Well, I put down, well, if that is in the kettle calling the pot, that's what I put That's exactly because this whole thing that we're only on a small section of this another Bible, basically, another War and Peace, that Iris has created.
Yeah.
That, and it's full of untruths. It's it's basically, as I said before, this is for people who just believe what they read. Do you know what I mean? And people that don't know any better. You know what I mean? That don't understand the case. But I know this is all BS.
Yes, and I think that part of it, her making it so huge like this is to
Yes.
impress Barry, and also maybe to get the girls corralled and keep them believing that he's that he didn't do this.
Yes.
But
Oh, they need the girls to believe. Do you know what I mean? That's for
yeah,
sure. That's for sure. That they're a big part of this. That they are believing what's going on here. Because if they turned, he's gone. Do you know what I mean? That's
yeah,
100%. I mean, they have to be supporting him.
because like how they got the girls to say on that TV interview that there was no problem in the marriage, when in early days the girls admitted that they knew that there were, or at least Macy admitted that she
Yeah,
knew that there were issues, and and Miles and his family, they knew
yeah,
that there were issues.
yeah. And the Richardsons, they knew, because Suzanne had her birthday party was in their house. It was I think it was Andrew's sister. I think it was Suzette, who had her birthday shared the same month anyway, around the same age. So it was in COVID. There was nowhere to have parties in COVID, so they just had a family get together down there, and they were saying that Suzanne was, going to keep helping Barry with his books and stuff like that. So they had a bridge. It was common knowledge to a lot of people that they were splitting up.
Hmm.
So where are all these people now? This is my question. If we want to go on to 206, because the rest of it is a lot of it about the DNA, and so I would leave that for.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
hopefully to get Patty.
yeah, she'd do a great job on that now.
Okay, it's 206.
Yeah.
That statement is false, as there was unknown foreign DNA found on the bicycle and the helmet, which was indicative of a stranger handling her bicycle helmet and bicycle. The unknown foreign DNA tends to prove an abduction, contrary to the arrest affidavit's theory that the bike and helmet were staged.
Now this is very interesting because I don't think Iris has thought too much about this, but basically what she's saying here is that this leads to an abduction. Now, where is the abduction? Is the abduction from the house, or is the abduction from the bike, from where the bike site was? Because that's very important. Because if Suzanne was abducted from her home, why would the abductor take her bike helmet, her phone, and her phone charger, her iPad, her journal, the towel she was sunbathing with the day before, and do all the housework, the laundry, then lock up the house before leaving? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not going to happen, right? And leave her money behind and her purse and whatever. And then if she was abducted from her bike, the abductor tossed her helmet out of the vehicle while heading west. How did Suzanne's Camel hydration pack, sunglasses, and gloves end up back in her Range Rover? Because she would have had all that gear on her. You know what I mean? If she was
Yes,
abducted.
exactly.
So what does he do? Abduct her and say, "Hold on, we'll do a detour past your house, and I'm going to put all this stuff that belongs to you into your car, and you know." And
Yeah.
anybody go to that house with all the CCTV cameras in it, if you were abducting somebody from the house, you wouldn't
Yes.
do it because you wouldn't know that CCTV cameras weren't working. Do you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it just doesn't make any sense. And I loved when I read that. I says, this is right up my alley here because she's struggling here. And this is the problem when you start telling lies, is that they come back to bite you. And this is why none of her theories of what would have happened to Suzanne work. Because
Right.
I've gone through them all. You know?
Because, like, if she was abducted from the bicycle, and then we'd have to assume that she was taken there and put into the vehicle and headed westbound, and then at some point, they
Yes.
took her helmet off of her and threw it out the driver's side of the vehicle
Yeah.
to end up on the west.
And then they disappeared because they didn't show up in the cameras up on
Monarch.
Monarch. Yeah, the first camera. There was no. They weren't seen. They would have been seen at Garfield. There's a camera at Garfield as well. Just on the CCTV camera on Garfield, and there's another one then up further up on the pass. So they weren't seen in that. So and then they weren't seen on the ones in the Shell station. So there's cameras everywhere. You know yourself. There's cameras. We have all the list of all the cameras. They're all around. If she was in a vehicle, they would have found her.
Exactly. And then, someplace else instead of the kidnapped thing, Iris mentions again about the supposed scent that we know was actually from the cop, but she's trying to imply that Suzanne ended up in that body of water flowing downstream. But if she had stumbled off her bicycle and gotten through the barbed wire fence without leaving any torn fabric or anything and ended up in the stream, how did her helmet then end up
upstream?
Upstream, yes.
Yes, upstream, and about 60 or 70 yards away from the Arkansas, South Arkansas, where the bike or where the helmet was found, because it sweeps, further south. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So yeah, all the time, Jules, it doesn't add up. And I've asked lots of people to give me theories of what happened to Suzanne, because I love them. You know what I mean? Give me more theories of what you think happened to Suzanne, because they don't pan out.
No,
where are we at now? 23.
In her car. Is that true?
I don't know what was all comment there.
So much here, but Jules, I'm going to keep at this. I've only gone up as far as just under 300.
Mm-hmm.
No, I have done it previously. Seven Court, we done it previously, but we didn't do it the way I'm doing it here. So I'm keeping it all in order. But from what I've done so far, all I see is a lot of BS.
Exactly.
Now there are some tough questions. There's tough questions about law enforcement and their theory. Do you know what I mean? Which she has down there, but that's okay. She's talking about theory. I'm talking about a murder. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like she's trying to catch them out on pings that they're running around at 50 miles an hour and blah blah blah. Look, I have an idea what time of day on what day Suzanne was killed, but really that's only it doesn't really matter so much. But she was killed, and by Barry.
Yes.
So, and this is the thing about law enforcement. They just have to work a little bit harder. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. I think they got sidetracked over the photo that got sent to Jeff Libler that they called proof of life. I think they got sidetracked with that, and that they had
100%.
originally thought a
Grusing,
different time
yeah.
frame.
But Grusing actually said it. He said it to Barry. He said that we thought it happened on May 8th. You know what I mean? Because
Uh-huh.
the stars all lined up for May 8th. Everything going crazy. You know, all these Facebook things going on, and her account being passwords being changed, and all that sort of stuff. And that's in there now as well. And if we read what Iris is saying about Suzanne's password being changed, she makes a big mistake, because she's basically telling us that the only person who could have changed Suzanne's password was Barry on Friday night. If you read it, it's a bit further down. But you come across it. I have it highlighted, but I couldn't tell you. I'll have to look for it now. But but basically, she's talking about the password being changed on the Saturday, and she's saying, well, the only person who could have changed the password on Saturday was the same person who changed it on Friday, and that was Suzanne. But because she made all these Facebook friends requests, but these Facebook friends requests was not Suzanne. That's not the type of. Number one, I don't believe Suzanne was alive at that time. But number two, it wasn't her thing. Like, you could see in our history, that's not the type of thing she'd done, you know. And these people were acquaintances of Suzanne's, basically, but they weren't friends. Do you know what I mean? One or two of them, but they were more Barry's friends and Andy's friends. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So no, it was just a crazy kind of thing to do. And who would do a crazy type of thing? Who's somebody who is off their head after doing something really bad. Do you know what I mean? They could do
Yeah.
something crazy like that. And the
And
fact then that he had to change the password the next day was because he probably forgot what password he put in. Do you know?
yes,
So
and the thing is too that Iris seems to think that you can only change your Facebook password if you know your Facebook password, but that's not the case at all. If you have like any kind of backup on it, like for instance your phone number, all you need is to have your phone to change it, or
that's
your
right.
email, access to your email.
And Barry did actually check this out with Facebook. Do you know what I mean? In April, he called Facebook password reset. Do you know what I mean? How do I reset my password? So that was in
Uh-huh.
April. Do you know what I mean? So we have that. Do you know what I mean? We have
Yeah.
it's in the AA. You know what I mean? So yeah,
So we've got proof of premeditation from, well before Suzanne was actually killed.
oh, I'm actually looking back 2019, easy,
Mhm.
and maybe even earlier. I think the trip that Barry made with the to Durango is pretty interesting to me, which is I think in 2018. He made
Yeah.
a with the fire crowd, voluntary firefighter.
Yeah, and
Went to Durango, and it's in Suzanne's messages between herself and Sheila, and I thought it was a bit odd, myself.
yeah,
Um,
it really stands out that who Barry ended up dating was from Durango. So
yes, that's right. Yeah, and even all that business is very strange. Um, like I know more than what most people do about, because I've spoke to people, so I
Mhm.
know that what we were led to believe was that the case, this romantic meeting at the dumpster up in the community dumpster up in Puma Path wasn't true, even though it sounds like something Barry would do, but no, they were together before Suzanne um, disappeared. And
Mhm.
the nearest house to People Path is where she was staying.
Yes.
She was at the Cushman's house holiday home. She was staying there, at that time. And she so happened that she was the one that seen a strange vehicle around at the bike site,
Mhm.
and a suspicious vehicle, I think she said. Oh no, sorry, that was the boyfriend. That was her ex fiance, Francis Back, who said that he seen a suspicious vehicle up at the bike site. But she's
Mhm.
also had a very similar story, and they were the two witnesses that Barry was on about, that seen this, and the law enforcement said no, they were checked out, and they were found to be not true, or
Yeah.
not to be credible or whatever. But even the fact that all this trying to blame his Shosho's daughter and the boyfriend, you know,
Yeah.
um, it's also weird. You
Mhm.
know, it's just it's you can't make this stuff up. You know, that's the way I look at it. Like, it's so obvious to me. Do you know what I mean? But there's more to it than meets the eye, Jules.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
the thing. But that's a start. There's a start now. We've gone through, I'd say, probably 200, of that list.
Yeah.
Um, I picked out the important ones. A lot of them are just mean nothing. They're just statements. And I'm thinking,
Yeah,
when I said this, why is she putting all this stuff in here? And I'm
and
thinking
she re-
she's trying to make this a masterpiece, to try and
yeah, and
sell this, or to make it difficult, because like the affidavit, it was tough enough. Like, I don't know how many times you read it, Jules, but I God knows how many times, like 30, maybe 30 times, I probably read that, and that is some read. But this is bigger, do you know?
yeah, and
Um,
she repeats herself a lot
a
in there
lot.
too, so that it tells me that she is trying to make it really big, and
Yes. Yeah.
she might even be hoping that people don't read the whole thing.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah. I don't know many people who've read much of it. I know you're reading it. You have been reading it. I know
Yeah.
AK read a lot of it. Uh,
Mhm.
and I read at the beginning when it came out, and I highlighted a lot of it on my sheet on it. We just put the highlighter across the stuff that I was interested in.
Mhm.
But going this way through it now is very interesting. And as I said, I'm up to 300 now. I don't know how is it. I have another 1,000 items to go through. So by next week, I'll probably have another 300 done. So, are there any questions, Jules?
Um, I'm gonna look and see if anybody's asked any questions. 'Cause,
I'm terrible with the chat. I have to apologize. I am terrible with the chat.
I am too. I've just been talking to you and looking at the papers, and I haven't really looked into the chat. So I'm gonna. Wow, there's a lot of it, and see if there's anything that we didn't Let's see. Let's see. We've got a comment from AK where he mentions there isn't anything from Garfield to the hydroelectric plant, I'm fairly certain. And let's see. And Baby Girl says, I think they call them the logistics on the Bobcat, traveling locations or something like that. So I know that but that's what reminded me that there was a thing in there where Iris was making a point about how the cadaver dogs didn't hit here, there, and everywhere, starting on the 12th, but then I believe it was the 23rd where they hit on the Bobcat and the Bobcat trailer and such. And I don't know what she thought that she was proving with that, because all that told me was that he had moved Suzanne with that equipment and on that trailer, that
Yeah.
the rocks on the trailer.
Yeah, well, we looked at that as well because we know that how long it takes for the body to start producing
Cadaverine.
cadaverine, yeah, and in roughly that you're talking about 9,000 feet there in around where Puma Path is,
Yeah.
And we worked it out that she would have to be about 22 hours around that sort of time. She'd have to be dead before the dogs could pick up the scent.
Correct.
And so when that hit was made, they didn't like that because that didn't suit their narrative, that she was killed on the Saturday. There wasn't enough time. So it would have had to be, and we're looking at 24 hours before. Do you know what I mean? We were looking at around 24 hours before.
Yeah.
That it would have been possible. So it's interesting. Just an interesting point. And the fact that the dog's sitting up inside the seat of the Bobcat,
Yeah.
is, I can't remember his name now, but I was thinking to myself, that dog deserves a medal.
Yeah.
But there is a lot in this as well. But she goes on about the Bobcat. She gets a lot of her facts wrong as well with the Bobcat. So it'll be interesting. I'm gonna keep doing this now. I'm gonna keep at it. Get another week in.
Excellent.
Going through it, and then we could address this again if you like.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I was just about to ask you that, if whether next week you want to continue.
Yeah.
And
yeah, this seems like it would suit me. This other Friday suits me. I don't know what time it is now. What time is it? It's about 8 minutes to 1 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Well, we'll sign off of here, and we'll see everybody probably next week on Friday. And thank you everyone for joining us. And
I hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah. And Tracy's asking if the lawsuit's online and where she can read it. So I'll try to put a link like on my community or something so that people can read it as well.
Yeah,
if I've still got my link.
Yeah, that's work because you've got both on that as well. Have you got both the affidavit and the lawsuit all of the one?
Yeah, I have all of them. So I'll try to get the links put in so that people can look at it too, and they can look along with us because we've been calling out which paragraphs and stuff like that. So
and they can look back over this anyway and be able to see what we're talking about. But okay. Thanks very much, folks.
Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Bye now.
Bye-bye. How to turn this off? Okay, now I gotta try to figure out how to turn this off, guys. I'm having a problem. There it goes.